Well, thanks for having me. So my name is Nimisha Gandhi. I am a functional and Ayurvedic nutritionist. My practice is really about making wellness accessible, wellness fun, but also using the latest scientific evidence, but also wisdom of our ancestors. And so I'm in San Francisco, but my practice is virtual, and I'm really excited to talk to you about women's health today. I'm going to do a screen share of some. Oh, do you mind enabling the screen sharing for
Gotcha.
me? Yeah. And then so I have some beautiful slides that I can go over. Um, yeah, and feel free to stop me for questions at any point or save them at the end. Any way works. It's a small group, so I think we can get through it rather quickly.
I had a quick question. I know you said you're an Ayurvedic specialist, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. Can you just explain a little bit more as to what that is?
Yeah, so Ayurveda is a medical system, one of the original medical systems in India, originating 5,000 years ago. And it really is an indigenous practice from India, but it has evolved. And to become an Ayurvedic doctor, you go to school for 10 years. So it's very complex, and very multi-layered, but it's just like your conventional medicine, but with more holistic, and it's a mind, body, soul, spirit medicine, where it's, when you go to an Ayurvedic doctor, they're looking at your mental health as well as your physical health and your environmental health, and which is really important. And so and then there are 8 branches to it. Everyone knows yoga, but yoga is a subset of Ayurveda. It's part of Ayurveda, and it's really an individualized medicine. So each person is seen as a unique person. So there's no generalization. It's all about your bio individuality, and they have something called doshas, which can be translated to epigenetics and your genotype. I is it? Can I? Oh yes. Okay. There we go. Is this working now? You can see my
Yes.
screen? Okay, great. So that's Ayurveda in a nutshell. And I'm going to be, so a lot of times, when we talk about in the West, like we talk about oil pulling or dry brushing, all of those, or tongue scraping, all of those originate in Ayurveda. So a lot of the wellness things come from Ayurveda. And so we already see a lot of it in our daily practice. And I'm going, since my practice is kind of a blend of modern medicine and Ayurveda, you'll see a lot of it showing up in the talk today. Um, so I liked, when I'm talking about women's health or menstruating people's health, really do like to talk about the menstrual cycle, even if you're in the menopause or postmenopausal stage. And the reason being is that our menstrual cycle is a fifth vital sign, meaning when you go to the doctor's office, when they take your heart rate, your pulse, your temperature, all, well, your menstrual cycle is another vital sign. So, your just like your blood pressure tells you a lot about how what's going on in your body or your temperature, so does your menstrual cycle. And so for menstruating, actively menstruating people, your doctor should be asking you like how are your cycles and what's going on with your cycles. And even if you're in the postmenopausal age, your doctor should at least ask you once, like, what were your periods like? Because it indicates your risk of heart disease, it indicates your risk of Alzheimer's or ovarian and breast cancer. Our menstrual cycle is really tied to the rest of our health. And So these are just some facts here. Like if you started your period before the age of 10, your risk of an adverse cardiac event is increased by 4 times. And if you had a delayed period, like starting at age 15 or later, the risk is increased by 2.5 times. So that's really important to know because women in particular, when you go to the doctor's office and you go in for like, oh, I'm having chest pain, doctors don't take that seriously. And this is well documented. When men go in for heart pain, they're taken care of immediately, but for some reason women aren't. Yet heart disease is the um, number one illness in women. And so it's really important that doctors are checking up on this. And if they aren't, you're giving them that information. Women who have regular menstrual cycles have a much lower risk of heart disease. So if you are actively menstruating, but you have very irregular menstrual cycles, it's really important that you kind of work on that and understand why are you having irregular menstrual cycles, and knowing that getting on the birth control pill is not going to regulate your cycles, it's just going to suppress your symptoms. So you really want to get to the root of it and regulate your cycles, because later on when you get postmenopausal, you don't want to have to deal with heart disease and Alzheimer's and breast cancer. And some women deal with all three at once. And it's really unfortunate when there were earlier on in her or their life, they could have been prevented or really helped. And there's so many, and I do, because my practice is mostly working with menstruating people. I just know so much about periods and like PCOS, fibroids, all sorts of things. And but I won't get into too much of that now, but I just really wanted to emphasize the importance of your menstrual cycle and how a lot of women think, oh, I'm postmenopausal, I don't have to deal with that anymore, but it still was a part of you and it's still part of your health history, and it can be an indication of how your later life plays out and what you can do. And you're thinking, well, I'm already postmenopausal, I can't go back and fix my period. But just having these facts can help prevent anything from happening. Or if you're already down this path, like you can start reversing it also, knowing that there was a root cause. um, I'm not going to get too much into the science of it, but the way our hormones work, it actually activates our brain in different ways. So if you're, I go through this whole thing, the 4 phases of your cycle. But Sandrine, you told me that most of your members are really postmenopausal, so I won't spend too much time on it. But maybe if your members are working with menstruating people, having this understanding that um, menstruating people are cyclical. They're not meant to be one way. And unfortunately, our society wants us to be like like happy the entire time and not have mood fluctuations or not have energy fluctuations. And our bodies are meant to have fluctuations, and each phase of our cycle represents a different strength in us. So our menstrual phase is really our rest phase. Our follicular phase is when the time after we're done bleeding, leading up to ovulation. That's like our most energetic. I say this is the time, go try out new workouts, go on dates, go do all the exciting, scary things. And then ovulation is like what I say, your boss babe phase, where you're really, the way your hormones are working right now, going back to this, your brain, you're actually more vocal and more confident, but eloquent too. You're able to really state what you want. And then your luteal phase, you're coming down again. All your hormones are starting to decrease. And it's completely normal to feel sad and moody at this time. But then there's a fine line from being like, having PMDD or other like where the symptoms are so bad you can't get out of bed and things, but a little bit of fluctuation, it's okay. We're not meant to be happy all the time. And then we have physical changes too. So just knowing this is a really important, even, as we raise menstruating people, as we're around menstruating people, I think it's very key to understanding. I'll skip this part. One way to understand that is keep a cycle tracker, and a cycle tracker, you could just download it on your phone, and you can start tracking like when you get your period, and then it kind of gives you a guesstimate of when you're ovulating. It's definitely not to use as a birth control method, but it's more for you to understand where you are in your cycle. And you can actually take this data to your doctor and say, hey, these are what my cycles were like. You can track over the years how they change. And so that's all I'm going to say about the cycle related to our health. But there are other aspects of women's health that need to be looked at. And so one of them is gut health. And gut health is, and this is regardless of what age you are or which season of life you are in, but our gut is a home to a very large number of microbes known as the gut microbiome. And this is like the biggest thing in medical research right now, because our gut is known as our second endocrine system, our second hormonal system, but also our second brain. And because we have what all these bacteria, fungi, viruses, and living harmoniously in our body, like we want them there. Even though they're bacteria and viruses, they're actually like good. When they become bad is when when we're exposed to something that can make us sick, but internally we're born with these and they're good for us because they're responsible for 75% of our immune system. And even during this pandemic, what we have found is that people who have a really strong gut health, they just have better outcomes with COVID-19. They're either not hospitalized, or at least if they are, they're able to recover really fast. And those with poor gut health either have unfortunately passed away from COVID-19, or they have that long haul symptoms where, even a year later, they're feeling the effects of COVID-19. So it's really important to fix our gut health. And how do we do that? I'll talk about that later. But in our gut, it's important to know that we produce progesterone, estrogen, melatonin. Melatonin helps us go to sleep. Cortisol. So if our gut health is unhealthy, we might have too much cortisol. If we have too much cortisol, that increases our risk of, again, heart disease, obesity, and stress-related health issues. Even our brain health is connected to our gut health. So this is a very big topic, but I wanted to just touch on it here because it really ties back into how it's important to take care of our well-being, what we nourish ourselves with, what we feed ourselves is what's really going to impact our health. And because we're talking about women's health, it's really important to also talk about environmental toxins. Women are more likely to get sick from environmental toxic exposures than males. And it may be because of our hormones, and maybe because we have the double X chromosome. There could be so many reasons, but hormones are one of the biggest reasons. So environmental illness is also known as invisible illness. And unfortunately, it takes a really long time for women to get diagnosed with autoimmune disease because, again, oftentimes we're gaslighted at the in the medical office, or it's just that there's so many things going on, it's hard to pinpoint and come up with a diagnosis. But things like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, fibroids is another big one that may be related to environmental toxins. And unfortunately, environmental toxins impact BIPOC people more. It impacts children more also. So it's really important to also know that as healthcare providers, but us as ourselves too, that we may be more at increased risk for these things. Um, so toxins are everywhere and they accumulate. So that's the problem, right? They accumulate. A lot of it we don't it doesn't kind of just excrete from our system. Like if we take too much vitamin C, we'll pee it out. Unfortunately, if we're exposed to like wildfire smoke, I'm in California and we have now what's called wildfire season. So being exposed to that, we can't just pee and poop it out or sweat it out. Like some of it just stays in our body. If we have more, if we're higher, if we have a higher body fat ratio, it can actually cling to our fat cells and stay. And then so that's how um, the toxins actually accumulate in our body. So again, it goes back to taking care of our well-being. Um, so what do we do about environmental toxins? I have this beautiful picture here of a monstera plant, and it reminds me of Sherry's background. um, Having actually plants in your home can be very, very helpful for your environmental health. So just in our home. So the actually, when we think about environmental toxins, where we might think, oh, the air we breathe outside when we go for a walk. Actually, the biggest exposure to environmental toxins is our very immediate home environment or office environment. And so we really need to clean that up. And how do we do that? So our furniture emits toxins. So, the quality of our furniture matters, the paint on our walls, all of those are our biggest. The rugs are one of the biggest environmental exposures. And like I could just tell you a story about a child that I had in my clinic, and this child, like parents got new carpeting, and all of a sudden the child started displaying all these sensory disorder issues and like just a lot of behavioral issues. And they were like, we don't know what triggered it. Was it this? Was it that? And then when I was doing my deep investigative work with these parents, I was like, well, what has changed? And they were like, oh, they finally got to that, they got new carpeting. Well, this carpeting emits a lot of toxins unless you get supernatural fat fibers, and you have to actively search for like low toxin type of carpet. But they just got, what was they got, and without doing much research to it. And so they had sent their child to their grandmother's house for a few days, and the child didn't report any of those behavioral issues, none of those sensory issues. But as soon as they brought him back into their home, the child started displaying all of these issues again. So they had, even though they put money into getting new carpet, they had to get rid of it for the health of their child. And so it seems so insidious, and like there's no way you can make the connection, but children are very sensitive to this. But then so are adults. And for us, we may not display it right away. It may take us longer. But if perhaps the parents in like 3 to 4 months of having that carpet in their home could have then resulted in like aches and pains, maybe hair loss or skin issues, it shows up. But then you have no way of, like, it's really hard to make connections like that. So you have to really kind of go out of your way and check everything. Other things that you could do in your home are green up your cleaning products. So don't use Windex and Lysol, the typical really heavy, hard hitting things, because they can really disrupt you. Even if you spray it, it stays in your air and you breathe it in. So it's really important to like maybe just if you could go on YouTube and say natural cleaning products, but just doing something like apple cider vinegar and like lemon juice, like that's enough. And during this pandemic, we've gone a little crazy with the amount of cleaners we use because yes, a year ago we had no idea, right? And we're cleaning everything because we had no idea where we would get this. But now we really know that COVID doesn't really transfer through surface. It's more air, it's more through breathing. So we don't need to be so crazy about cleaning so fanatic about it. So look up the green cleaners, make your own. Be wary of greenwashing, meaning there are like companies like that say that they're healthy or low toxin, but they're really not. They just have a green branding. So you gotta, there's another really great website. Actually, I recommend you go to ewg.org. And if you put in your products there, even your makeup, it will tell you how toxic it is or how not toxic it is. So for women, especially hair care products, skin is our largest organ and it's porous. So if you put lotion on, it takes 20 seconds for it to enter your bloodstream. It enters your bloodstream. So if you're using a very toxic lotion, it's going into your system. So when I'm talking to women who are trying to prevent breast cancer or who have breast cancer and don't want it to come back or something like that, I always say the first thing you can control is what you put on your body. Even if food is not accessible, not everyone has access to organic food and this and that. So, but there are different areas in our life that we can look at. And one of them is what we put on our body through makeup and hair care products, lotions. I always say use coconut oil to moisturize yourself or almond oil, like something like more of like a natural substance. Shea butter is actually really great as long as it doesn't have all these other additives to it. Cocoa butter is really great too. So looking at things like that to put onto your skin, hair, you can, even hair dye, like I have a lot of gray hair, I'm 38. And, but I try to use more like more of the organic hair dye, just because I know it's right getting into my scalp, my brain. So those are some of the things we can look at in toxins. And I really could talk for about 3 hours just on toxins and what we could do to reduce our exposure. But I just wanted to give you a little bit, kind of open your eyes to areas that might be, um, that you might be exposed to. So going back to what you can do, getting cleaner, greener beauty products in your home, having plants. If you research NASA's top environmental plants, these are NASA has looked up 19 house plants that you could keep in your home that actually acts like an air purifier. It sucks in the VOCs, fire retardants, all those things that might be emitting from your furniture. And they're hard to kill plants. So even if you don't have a green thumb, these are really easy to care for plants. They kind of take care of themselves as long as you love them a little bit by giving them water and enough light. So you could research that too. Really great. I have plants everywhere, and they're growing, and it's really great. Breast health is so important to talk about when we're talking about women's health, right? So our breast is actually connected to our lymph nodes. Our lymph nodes is what, keeps our immune system going. It processes a lot of toxins, but it can store a lot of toxins. So doing a breast massage once a week is really recommended. And again, you can go on YouTube on how to properly do a breast massage. I have the tips laid out to here, but it's just so much better to watch a video and or have someone like teach you how to do it. But you could do it. And really, when you do that, have like a loving affirmation for yourself. Sometimes when I look at my breasts and I'm like, oh, they're so saggy, or like they're this or that. But those are really negative thoughts that we have for our bodies. So when we're touching ourselves, saying things like, oh, my breasts are soft, I'm tender, I love my body, having just really loving words and kind words to ourselves can make a difference. So while we're doing our breast massage, we can have those affirmations with us. Um, Break a sweat. That's really important. So moving, and I'm not saying go run a marathon. If running is not your thing, don't do it. If it doesn't bring you joy, don't do it. But some sort of movement outside of just like walking from your car to your home to your office, like actually like walking around the block or the park, or maybe doing a yoga video or something. That's really, really important that we have movement in our body, and sweating. So a lot of times, like our lymph nodes get blocked up because there's stagnation, there's not enough movement. So the actively massaging it, it's creating movement, it's breaking up that stagnation. But we have to move our physical body too. We were meant to, as humans, we were meant to move, not just sit in front of a computer. So really making it a point to move every day, about at least half an hour, and getting that natural sunlight whenever you have the possibility. The weather can, I'm blessed. I live in California. I get dry, good weather most of the time. But if you're indoors and because of weather, maybe you can like watch do like a yoga video or something. And you don't have to do one of those like intense yoga videos. Like yoga wasn't meant to be like that. If you look at the original form of yoga, it's really like slow and mindful, and that can be enough. Staying hydrated, drinking lots of water, that's given. Performing a seasonal cleanse. I won't get too much into that, but I don't really mean like a juice detox. It could just really be about like livening up what you're eating, kind of giving a break if you tend to have like a certain type of food all the time, giving it a break and introducing new foods. That could what a seasonal cleanse can be. Ayurveda goes really into what a seasonal cleanse is, but just for time's sake, I'm just going to leave it as that. Avoiding commercial deodorant, that's a huge one. And that's one that's been talked a lot about when it comes to breast health. So our lymph nodes are all right here, and it's connected to our breasts. So it's, when we're putting like those commercial brands like Secret and Dove, they all have really toxic ingredients in it. And it gets, our pores here are really large, and they get really, like it gets absorbed and right into our breast. So we want to avoid that. Well, I'd say just skip deodorant. We're home all the time anyways now. If we really, really need, like I save like Secret, like the strong stuff for like really important outing, like a wedding, or where it's so rare that I would use it, but I know I'm gonna, I'm going somewhere and I really don't want to have stinky armpits. So that's when I'll use it. And at other times I use more natural products where it doesn't really prevent me from sweating, but it does prevent the odor. And there's lots of options out there. But the main thing is you want to avoid like aluminum in the deodorant, because that's very toxic. Um, does anyone have any questions at this point? No. And just going back to this, you'll kind of, if you really pay attention to your body, you can also know that if you're sensitive to a body product. Like for me, I have this foundation, every time I put it on, my nose starts like half an hour later, my nose gets clogged up and my nose starts running. And I know that there's something in that foundation that's causing that, because I don't have that issue any other time. So pay attention to your body. Also, it gives you subtle signs all of the time. So it's just that we have to be open to receiving that message. So, what is the ideal hormone balancing diet, or the ideal diet for women's health? And I want to go back to, there's no one size fits all. And instead of following diet trends and trying to eat, there are all these different diet trends like keto, paleo, eating for your menstrual cycle. All of those are unsustainable. They're at short term, they might work. Even veganism, plant based, all of that might work short term, but it's not the answer for the long game. And it really isn't. And that's why we go on these yo-yo diets, and there's lots of frustration. Some of these diets can be very expensive, I think. But at the end of the day, at the core of any healthy diet would be eating whole foods, naturally whole foods. And that can include healthy animal products, and that can not products, I meant actual animal meat. So there's a difference. Like products can be like sausage and really like those are like hot dogs. Those are really toxic, right? But eating ground beef that comes from organic meat can be actually part of your healthy diet. So I really want to break down those stigmas here, but it's also really, really important to eat lots and lots of vegetables. Our ancestors, their primary diet came from vegetables in all over the world. I don't care where your ancestors, I mean, unless you were like Eskimos, like living in Alaska or the Arctics, like where it snowed all the time, and they did really mostly eat sea animals. Everywhere else in the world, it was all about eating the vegetables and plants around them, and meat came by rarely. And if your ancestors, okay, I take that back. If your ancestors lived on the coast, they most probably also ate a lot of seafood. But still, again, majority of plates should be about vegetables and plant-based grains and like lentils, beans, whole grains. Those are what are really, really healthy. But then you also want to make sure you have protein and good amount of fats. And so that's what a basic diet is. Our ancestors were not eating crackers, they were not eating chips or drinking Coca-Cola. And so we have to really think about returning to that state of mind, because even though we have a lot of medical advances today, heart disease wasn't really even documented until the early 1900s, with the advent of commercial foods. So there's a lot to say about that. So, diabetes, heart disease, a lot of that can be reversed with eating well. So an ideal diet, in my opinion, and what I've seen from my 15 years in this field, is that having a very minimally processed diet and staying away from the sugars. So sugars really acidifies our bones and our body. It can cause a lot of health issues, but like cane sugar and processed beet sugars, all of that, they actually rob our bodies of nutrients. So magnesium, all of the vitamin C, it really takes it away from our bones. So we want, and that's not good. So leaving the treats for a real treat, and not a daily treat, but like maybe a Friday or at the end of the month, or an actual birthday or celebration. Carb cravings, they're natural, and I want to talk about this because we all have cravings, but sometimes we have to ask, like, are we really craving food and that carbohydrate, or is it just to fill a void? And are we eating emotionally eating, or is it out of true hunger? And sometimes like doing something else we love can eliminate that craving, like dancing, shaking it off, or painting, having a conversation with a loved one. And after that, if you're still hungry, maybe you're truly hungry and you really need some food. But when we crave carbohydrates, our body is not asking for us to eat donuts. Our body is actually asking us to eat like sweet potatoes and quinoa and buckwheat, like the whole grains. Why? Because those are the foods that actually have the nutrients that you need, the magnesium, the B vitamins. What your body is asking for is not carbohydrates per se. What your body is really asking for is the micronutrients, the vitamins, and the minerals. And unfortunately, donuts and cookies don't have those vitamins and minerals. Even if they say fortify, our body is not really absorbing that. It's not real food. And we might have cravings for so many reasons. Low grade chronic pain, sleep deprivation, again, our hormonal levels. Um, if we're low on serotonin, things like that. And so you could boost your serotonin by doing something you love, right? It doesn't always have to be food related. Um, and then here's some great snack ideas, like like super dark chocolate, like I would say 75% dark. And that has like coconut sugar over cane sugar. Fair trade dark chocolate is really important over like Hershey's, just because of ethics, but because also Hershey's has terrible ingredients. Lots of fillers is not true chocolate. um, Baked sweet potato. Your snacks can actually be mini meals. They don't necessarily have to be what we consider snacks. So these are just some ideas. Drinking herbal teas can be really fulfilling and satiating too. Here's the sample 1 day meal plan because I get asked like what do I eat? What do I eat for my health? And starting your morning with like warm water with lemon just kind of gets your, and have it be filtered water because we get exposed to a lot of toxins through our water too. So just using a simple water filter with lemon, that really gets our body, like wakes it up, helps like our liver, loves our liver. And then starting the morning with, for women, having high protein and high fat in the morning and more carbohydrates at night is actually really, really helpful. So it helps us sleep better, balances our blood sugar better. But when we eat like high fat and high protein in the morning, it also stabilizes our insulin levels. So we have less cravings and hunger throughout the day. So starting them like eggs, eggs are really like, I think eggs are one of nature's best foods. They're relatively affordable. You get so much nutrients out of them using fresh or frozen leafy greens and adding spices. Spices are so important and underutilized in our in our American society. But spices like just have so much nutrients in them. Um, Having something like an avocado and then toast if you needed more carbohydrates, and having green or herbal tea. You definitely don't want to have caffeine on an empty stomach. Have it like half an hour after your first meal of the day. Doing it first on an empty stomach will really spike your blood sugar. Um, Lunch, having a healthy protein like a smoked salmon with lots of vegetables and herbs. I say gluten-free bread because most people I work with have some sort of like reaction to gluten, or it just causes an inflammation in your body. But that doesn't mean everyone needs to go gluten-free, but it does matter the quality of bread. So you want to choose like a sourdough bread that the ingredients are seriously only like uh, flour, water, yeast, and salt. If you look at most commercial breads, they have like like 10 ingredients, and most of them are like a different name for sugar. That's what's going to cause heart disease and drive up inflammation in your body. Um, Cup of bone broth and with like some miso, something fermented, mushrooms like that. Dinner, again, a little bit more carbohydrate rich with like lentils and roasted vegetables, rice cooked in broth, and a side of fermented vegetables. This is, I would say, like an ideal meal, kind of, and you don't have to eat like this specifically, but it's kind of just like a recipe, kind of like an idea to give you. Um, Avoiding vegetable oils and anything low fat and hydrogenated fats is really, really important. Uh, and so, what's like healthy fats are actually coconut oil, even grass-fed butter, grass-fed ghee, avocado oil. Unhealthy oils are like canola oil, vegetable oils, peanut oil, anything like that that have been ultra processed, and those is what's caused trans fat, and again, heart disease and diabetes. I always get asked about supplements, and we only have a few more minutes left, but I think it's, at the end of the day, it's really important to take a multivitamin and multimineral, especially if your meals are not 100%. They're just like if you're not eating enough vegetables and plant-based foods. But the quality of your vitamins also matter. So don't run to Costco for your vitamins because a lot of those can have they can actually be really toxic because one, they don't, if they say they have 100% vitamin D, but with the quality that they made it with, your body might only be able to absorb like 10% of that vitamin D, and the rest gets to your liver to process and can become really toxic. Um, as a practitioner, I use what's called practitioner grade supplements. Just even if you're like, oh, go to Whole Foods and get my supplements from Whole Foods because it has this branding, right? Like, but a lot of the supplements on Whole Foods are not great either. You could check your supplements for quality assurance at labdoor.com or qualityassurance.com. Or you can get supplements from a practitioner like myself. This is my own personal link of where you can get the supplements I recommend. Um, but I just wanted to say it's really important to get quality supplements. Sometimes it's better not to take a supplement than to take a terrible quality supplement because it can be worse for your body. Okay, so if I had to choose one supplement that I'd tell everyone to take, it would be vitamin D, especially now because vitamin D does like so many things in our body. Vitamin D is actually not even a vitamin, it's actually a hormone. And people with more melanin in their skin have a harder time absorbing vitamin D from the sun. And and so I think it's just really important to take a vitamin D supplement of at least 2,000 or even 4,000 IUs a day. Make sure you get your blood tested to see, your a good vitamin D status. You want it to be around the 50 nanogram level. And again, the pandemic has showed us how important vitamin D is. So people who were deficient in vitamin D in their blood had really poor COVID-19 outcomes. And people who had really great vitamin D levels, they were almost asymptomatic even though they got COVID. So again, just so important in so many aspects of our life, vitamin D. More hormone balancing tips. Making sure you're pooping regularly. And pooping regular means at least once a day and having a smooth bowel movement that where you're not straining and it's not clumpy or too runny. Why? Because our poop helps us eliminate toxins from our body. It eliminates excess estrogen, excess, just bacteria and viruses that we may, that are harmful for us. It's just so important to poop every single day. How do we work on that? Again, eating more fiber rich foods, aiming for at least 30 grams of fiber a day, but don't do it all at once. Ramp it up. And laxatives don't always help. Actually, laxatives can make it worse. So, a more natural solution would be like taking a magnesium biglycinate supplement, and really working with maybe even a nutritionist or a healthcare practitioner to make sure that understanding why you're not pooping. You know, Women can actually experience constipation because their pelvic floor is weak or too tight. After childbirth, a lot of women experience pelvic floor dysfunction, but they don't realize it because no one's checking them. So having that conversation with your healthcare provider can be really important, and getting screened for your pelvic floor. And there are actual pelvic floor therapists. Um, Lots of great pelvic floor therapists who, will ask you like if you're what your bowel movements are like, because it's all connected. Even incontinence, when you're like you sneeze and you leak a little bit, that's not normal. Even if it's like, a lot of people's like, oh, you're just getting older, post menopause. That, no, it doesn't matter at what stage in life. That's just not normal. So working with a pelvic floor therapist is also really important, to do that. And doing Kegels are not always the answer, because some women, especially women who've been exposed to trauma, especially sexual trauma, they actually, their muscles are too tight because they're always in that clenched state. So understanding that Kegels can actually make their symptoms worse. They need more body relaxation and loosening techniques, not tightening. So, it's you go on social media and everyone's like Kegels, Kegels, and I was like, no, Kegels are not right for a lot of women. Even men should go see a pelvic floor therapist too, because they have a pelvic floor too. um, Emotional well-being, that's another really important part, addressing our mental health also. And so if we have unreleased emotions, it's going to get trapped in our body. And there's a really great book called Our Body Keeps Score. And it's a really hard read. It's actually really, even for me, it's like hard for me to read it because it's just too much information in there. But the general idea is that our body holds on to our emotions and it will manifest in so many ways. So if we don't find a way to express our emotions or get the mental help that we need, whether it's therapy or something else, it's going to show up as disease in our body. So suppressing our emotions also can be like suppressing our identity. So it's really important to find a way to be our authentic selves by releasing some of the emotions in a safe space and in a safe way. Um, just a few more hormone balancing tips: getting enough sleep, moving. We've talked about probiotics, eating those fibers and fiber-rich foods, not necessarily taking a probiotic supplement, pooping daily, self-pleasure. At any age, masturbation has been shown to be wonderful for women's health. So self-pleasure is really important, but it can also be self-pleasure in, again, like doing the things you love, whether it's gardening or talking to a loved one or dancing or even buying yourself flowers, things like that. We've already talked about a lot of this, so I'm not going to go over it. But yeah, I want to leave time for questions at the end, so I'm going to stop there. Yeah. So do any of you have questions? Oh, I see stuff in the chat box. Oh, yeah. Do any of you have questions or comments?
Hi, Nimisha, right? Am I saying
Nimisha.
that right? Thank you for that really healthy presentation. It was a lot of information, very helpful. I do have a question about the healthy gut. How do you know, or how can you be diagnosed as to whether you have a healthy gut or not? Because I hear a lot about leaky gut, and what
Uh-huh.
does that really mean?
Oh man, I could do a whole presentation just on that. So leaky gut is when, okay, like look at my knuckles. Imagine this is our gut lining, and this is how our gut is, and there's very little that can get through the gaps, right? But in leaky gut, they've kind of opened up in our gut. And so things are going in and out when they shouldn't be. What goes in our gut should stay in our gut. They shouldn't be going into our bloodstream and out. So this is how a lot of immune response things get triggered. And so toxins are going out of into our bloodstream, so it can cause like arthritis and joint pain, all sorts of inflammation. But things from our blood can be getting into our gut also. So that is what in just what leaky gut is. How do we heal that up? Through a lot of like taking away trigger foods. So a lot of times leaky gut happens because we're constantly exposed to foods that our body is really sensitive to. So I always look at the top 8 allergens in the United States, which includes wheat, dairy, eggs, soy, peanuts, corn, and strawberries. And so kind of removing those, and then it's like a whole process, like a 3 to 6 month process, removing those, seeing how your body is still reacting, healing it up with certain supplements, collagen, bone broth, things like that, really healing foods, and then reintroducing those foods to see if they still cause a reaction. You can get lab testing done. If you get independent testing, they can be very, very, very expensive, like up to $500 for a test. But you can also just start having a basic conversation with your GI doctor or your regular physician and saying, hey, I'm having a lot of digestive issues. Can we do a basic stool test? And in the stool test, it'll tell you also if you have any infections, because a lot of times, and most people have infections, and it's like just from what we were exposed to in our water, or if we ever had any kind of diarrhea or something like that, or we were exposed to like rotten food or something, we can have an infection and it could stay in our body for the rest of our lives unless we actively get rid of it. So doing a stool test can tell you about basic infections. You might need to dig deeper if that comes out normal, but you're still like, okay, but I still have those symptoms. So what's going on? And there are all sorts of tests that you can do. Another one, I'll type it in, is a SIBO test, and a comprehensive stool analyses. Those are the 2 tests that you can get done for your gut health. Other ways to know that your gut health is not functioning, and how I know when I'm talking to somebody, because I've been doing this work for so long, I have a questionnaire, and a lot of red flags come up on those questionnaires. I'm like, okay, there's definitely something going on. So feeling tired after eating, or getting brain fog, meaning like you just can't think through. You just can't think through what you can't make a clear thought. You just feel sleepy. I get like that after I eat gluten. I'm very sensitive to gluten. So, and how I knew was that about 12 years ago, I would have like a latte. I was working in downtown San Francisco, and I would have like a latte, and then I would have like a big sandwich for lunch, right? And then after that, I would want to sleep for like 18 hours straight. And that is like nothing, like no amount of caffeine would make me alert enough. And then when I removed those foods, I felt energetic. I felt like I reclaimed my brain. And so that's very common, though. That's a very common symptom, even in children. It shows up as having a lot of meltdowns, and adults don't really melt down because we've tamed our emotions. But what do? We do have anger and irritability, or the inability to focus. So things like that. So a lot of mental health. And then skin issues, acne or eczema, psoriasis, all of those can be really telling if you have gut health issues. Constipation or diarrhea, or alternating between the two, again, gut health issues. Yeah.
Thank you.
And that SIBO test, Nimisha, is that a stool test or is that a breath test? I know there's different variations on that.
There are 2 types, so it just depends on what your doctor will do. I think the breath test is more accurate, but not all doctors do that one.
I guess so. This is small intestinal overgrowth because a lot of times they're always focusing on the colon versus the small intestine, and a lot of
Yeah.
challenges there.
Yeah.
Even in the mouth too, I guess there's issues there. People can sort of get a sense of what's going on in the GI tract with what's going on in your mouth.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the testing too. The stool testing can pick up the food allergens as well, right?
Sometimes you might have to do another food allergy test or a food sensitivity panel.
As a stool test, though, right?
Sometimes it's a blood test.
Mm.
So Nimisha, would you recommend a pro or prebiotic daily or both daily? Because I know sometimes mix.
Yeah, I recommend just getting it all from food. So eating things like sauerkraut, miso, anything fermented, and then your vegetables have so your body has the ability to make its own probiotics, but you need to feed it the prebiotics. So what foods have prebiotics? Basically all vegetables, but the highest source are like asparagus, anything in the onion family, any like bitter foods like dandelion greens, beet greens, those arugula, those have a lot of prebiotics. If you were to take a supplement, which is fine, you just want to make sure it's shelf stable because you don't want it to be sitting at the store and then all of the good stuff has already died off.
Gotcha.
Shelf stable and at least 10 different strains and 50 billion CFUs. So I just put it in the chat. That's what you want to look for in a probiotic. But I haven't seen too many prebiotic supplements, and I would be weary if, like, you're in there and there are all these, like, I've seen crackers that says prebiotics on them or probiotics. Like, that's just all marketing jargon junk. Get it from your vegetables, get it from your, if you can tolerate dairy, get it from your whole fat plain yogurt. Or kefir. Kefir is another good one. But every culture has their own fermented food for a reason. It's an ancestral food, and it just has a lot of. That's where you can get your bulk of your probiotics.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sauerkraut and pickles and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, every culture has like a pickle. Like in Korea, they eat kimchi. In India, they eat achar. So like get worldly with it. I'm forgetting. Oh, miso is another great one. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nimisha, for all the information you have provided us today. It has been so beneficial. I know I have a page of notes. I saw Sherry, I saw Raquel, taking notes. And, we've just been very intent. And thank you for just giving us such a plethora of information from the plants. I even went on the NASA website already and got the list. So it's just been really awesome to hear all these things that we should and could be doing and can implement in our own lives just to become healthier individuals. I really appreciate you, and we can't thank you for having such a wonderful event with us here at AmitaCare today. We hope to have you back in the near future for another presentation. If there aren't any more questions, we can definitely close out now, but just a round of applause for Nimisha and all the information that she's brought to us today. Kudos to you, and feel free to just let us know where we can maybe find you.
Yeah, I'll put in my email address. So if you have any questions for me, and then I'm really big on Instagram. Like I post there a couple of times a week, and I just have a lot of great information. So I have my Instagram there too, if you wanted to follow me on social. But that's my email address too, if you wanted to just email me if you had any questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nimisha. We so appreciate this information. We thank everyone for joining us today for this wonderful session on women's health and nutrition and preventative care. Thank you again to Nimisha Gandhi, our expert nutritionist, and I don't want to mess up the name. It's Ayurveda specialist, right? Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Everyone, we hope to see you again for future events. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Take care, be well, and be safe.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.